everybody, this video is on the topic of solving the issue of your dog barking at noises while inside your house by creating a behavior modification plan. Now, if you learn better by reading, I have an article on this exact same topic and I'll link that in the description below. I find it extremely important to work on this issue, especially if your dog is barking or worrying or alerting to noises every day of their life while in your house or apartment. This is because your dog doesn't have a place where he feels safe enough that he can get a proper deep sleep without having to worry about what's going on outside. So I believe it's in not only your dog's best interest, but also your interest to solve this issue, because what can happen is if your dog is constantly not getting enough sleep because he's worrying about noises outside or reacting to noises outside, he's going to start having other behavioral issues, such as a lot of dogs actually react to dogs and people in the street more. So a lot of people might hire a trainer and they're working on their dog not barking at people or dogs while outside on a walk, but then every day when the dog gets left and the owner goes to work, the dog is then barking at people and dogs that they hear when they're outside, so the training can seem like it's going nowhere. So before you even try to address the dog reacting when out on a walk, you really have to get to the root of the problem, which is the dog is reacting while inside of your house. This is my behavior modification plan. Number 1 is preventing the dog from hearing the noises in between training sessions as much as possible. Number 2 is setting up training sessions where you can teach your dog to be calm and relaxed in the presence of the noises. And number 3 is training in real life. I'm going to go over each of these. The first step is using prevention. Preventing your dog rehearsing the behavior of reacting to the noises in between training sessions. Now, if you live in a small apartment that's pretty noisy, it can be hard to get rid of the noises completely, but trying your best to reduce the noises can be helpful. For example, if your dog is left in a quiet room, those noises upstairs might be more intense than if there's music playing and white noise machines. So some of the things that I like to do with my clients' dogs and also with my own dogs that have in the past had a problem with this is use a white noise machine, a fan, and when the dog is left alone, leaving the dog in the least noisiest place in the apartment or house. So for some houses and apartments, the least noisiest place might actually be the center of the living room, so you can create a pen with a crate and a radio next to the pen so that the dog is not hearing the noises from the windows. First, you would need to train the dog to be okay with being left in this situation, but it can create a dog that is much calmer when being left alone because they're not being bombarded by all these noises from outside. Now, if you live in an apartment or a house where the noises come from one direction, perhaps the street, then I suggest keeping the dog in the room furthest from that place where the street and the noises outside are coming from. So if there's a front door and a hallway and there's a back bedroom, that might actually be the best place to leave the dog. Now, it's important that whenever you leave a dog, you train them first to be left in this situation, because that could also add to the dog's stress. If they're suddenly left in a new situation, they might react even more to the noises. If your dog is only barking at noises when you're not home, it could be due to the fact that your dog feels uncomfortable being left home alone, and that is the big piece of the puzzle that you need to be working on, which is teaching your dog to feel comfortable and relaxed when home alone. I suggest the best plan of action is teaching the dog to want to sleep when you're not in the house, and to promote your dog sleeping when you're gone. It's a great idea to set up training sessions where you leave your dog while you're home in the setup that you'll be leaving your dog when you're not home, and working on the dog relaxing on his dog bed when left in this situation. I'll link a video in the description below of how to teach your dog to go to the bed and also how to teach your dog to settle. The next step is setting up training sessions to teach your dog to be calm and relaxed when hearing these noises. Now, most dogs are so sensitized to the actual noises that when they hear the actual noise, they're so aroused that they can't help but bark, and they might not even want to take treats. So it's important to break the training up into small, achievable steps so your dog is calm every step of the way. One way to do this is to write a list of all the noises that your dog reacts to If you're not sure what the noises are, you can just take a guess and create noises that happen outside the house and work on them. And as you're working on them, you might find that your dog is getting excited by those noises, and that tells you that they're probably the noises that your dog reacts to. So some examples of noises to work on are the sound of footsteps, running, shuffling feet, people's voices, the sound of jingling dog collars, the sound of jingling keys, the sound of dogs barking or panting or pulling on leash where they're kind of gagging like that. That's a big trigger for some dogs. The sound of cars, the sound of motorbikes, the sound of a bicycle or skateboards outside, and the sound of the neighbors thudding around in the apartment, the sound of doorknobs if you live in an apartment where people are going in and out of the doors, or the elevator noise. So one thing you can do is record the sounds outside with your phone or your computer and then play them back inside at a very low volume. The other idea is if you have keys or jingly collars, you can reproduce the sound inside. So what you're doing is you're conditioning the dog to find the sound means nothing. So for example, if you use keys, you jingle your key, then feed a treat. And it's extremely important to do it inside your home where your dog can see where the sound is coming from. So if you've recorded something or you're playing back a video where there's a jingly key, you play the video, feed a treat, where your dog sees that you're holding the equipment that's making the sound to reduce the startle, because if your dog doesn't know where the sound is coming from, he most likely will bark. If your dog gets excited by the sound of knocking, I have a video on breaking the steps up small enough, and I'll link that in the description below. But basically, you're sitting in front of your dog, you knock, and then give them a treat. Knock, and then give them a treat, and then increase. And you might be amazed at how startled a dog can get even when you knock on your own furniture and they can see you doing it. So it might take quite a few training sessions before your dog understands that these noises aren't scary or exciting anymore. So keep up your training, especially if you have one of those places where you just can't prevent the dog from hearing any noises. The part of the training that's going to help your dog is the training setups. So if your dog is hearing the noises in between the training, it's going to water down the effectiveness of your training. So you really need to set up training sessions every single day to teach your dog that these noises aren't scary and they just simply mean to relax and be calm. Once your dog has gotten to the point where he's comfortable hearing these noises while he's inside his house and seeing where the source of the noise is coming from inside the house, you can start to work on the concept of the noises coming from outside. So one of your family members can have your dog on a leash and harness, and your dog can watch as another family member or friend leaves the house and produces the noises from the doorway, where the dog can see that it's still that same person producing the noises. Now, if the dog were to bark, it simply means to go back a step and make things easier. So you might need to go back and work on the noises inside the house before then working on them outside. Once the dog is comfortable with hearing the noises with the door open, you can then practice having the family member walking past the window, making those same noises. From inside, the person who's working with the dog is going to feed the dog every time they hear the noise. It's extremely important that your dog isn't alerting to the noises. So you really want a dog that looks like they almost don't even know the noise is happening, where they're casually looking around. If your dog is constantly on edge during this training, it means that you're pushing the training too quickly, and it's not going to help your dog to be calm when hearing the noises. So you need to break up the steps small enough where your dog is relaxed. So if your dog is really startled when somebody runs past the window and it's a family member, then you can practice first inside with the family member running back and forth until the dog is really relaxed with that behavior before seeing it happening outside, which might be seeing and hearing it, which might be the trigger. A lot of times seeing the things outside as well can trigger dogs to bark. So part of the prevention plan for that would be not allowing the dog access to seeing out of the windows. And some dogs can even see under door cracks, so they'll see shadows of people passing their apartment. So you can prevent your dog from seeing these triggers as well, because they can also cause your dog to bark. The third step is real-life training. After multiple training sessions where you've taught your dog to be calm around the noises and the artificial noises you've created outside, you're then going to start giving your dog feedback for the actual noises that happen. So you turn off your white noise machine, maybe you're on your computer, and you hear a noise outside. And as you hear the noise, you tell your dog how good he is in a calm, relaxed manner. So maybe there's a little knocking noise, and you turn to your dog and say, good. And then you get up casually and walk over and get your dog a treat out of a treat container. Either you could get the treat from the fridge, or you can have treat containers around your house with some dried treats so they're easily accessible for noises. It's really important that every single noise you hear, you give your dog feedback in a calm, relaxed manner and give them reinforcement for not reacting to the noises. If you can't hear the noises yourself that the dog is hearing, what you can do instead is have the dog in the same room as you, and as you see your dog lift his head up as if to hear the noise, that's when you're immediately going to give him the calm feedback of telling him how good he is and then going to get the treat. What to do if the dog does bark at a noise? Now, it's important to understand that the best behavior modification plan would be where you're trying to prevent the dog barking at noises at all as you're training your dog the new emotional response of being calm and relaxed when hearing the noises. But of course, accidents do happen, or you make your training go too quickly and the dog might react to one of the noises that you're using in a training setup, or perhaps everyday life, your dog hears the noise through the white noise machine or when you have the white noise machine off. And what should you do? I think it's extremely important to not ignore the dog when they're barking, because barking can be self-reinforcing and they might bark for the rest of their lives if you just ignore them. So for me, it's important to interrupt the behavior and redirect the dog to a behavior you would like the dog to be doing. So some of the ways that you interrupt undesirable behavior work really well. I have a video on how to interrupt undesirable behavior, and I'll link that in the description below. But a couple of ways are using cues that you've trained with positive reinforcement, like a recall. So if your dog has an extremely strong recall, you can call your dog as they start barking. Another one is the leave it cue and the cue to go to your bed. If you've just started training one of these, like the leave it or the go to your bed, I don't suggest trying to use them to interrupt barking. It's better to use cues that are extremely strong, that you've trained in at least 12 training sessions, where the dog has got a conditioned emotional response to the cue and the response to want to listen to you. If you try to use cues you've just trained when your dog is barking, most likely they won't even hear you. Simply interrupting your dog every time he starts barking is not the best training method to teach your dog not to bark at noises. The best method is by reinforcing the behavior you do want your dog to do when he hears the noise initially, which is to be calm and relaxed. And the best way to do this is by setting up training setups. In the future, when you've resolved the issue of your dog barking at noises outside the house, I still find it extremely important that if you hear an extra loud noise or a new noise or one that you haven't heard in a very long time, that you give your dog positive feedback when hearing the noise. Instead of just sitting silently and wondering what will happen, I suggest as you hear the noise, you turn to your dog, you show them calming signals, you blink at them, you smile in a calm, relaxed manner, you can even sigh, and tell your dog how good he is when hearing the noise. This will let your dog know that you hear the noise and that it's not an issue for him to worry about. It's just one of those training games. If you keep really quiet and pretend like you haven't heard the noise, I find that doesn't help the dog out as much, and they can regress to their previous behavior of barking at whatever noise it is. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful for your training. If you'd like to support my work, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. You can also become a supporting member of Channel Kiko Pup by clicking the join button. Thank you so much. Bye.